Today I want to go over how to work the roller delayed blowback, C308, PTR91 GI, which this is with a few modifications, wide forearm grip, a 16-inch bull barrel that I had modified. It's not exactly stock anymore. So anyways, I wanted to first go over the platform in general. Being a roller delayed blowback, it's not locked. It may have a piece in there called the locking piece that pushes the rollers into the trunnion and keeps tension there, but most of the time the locking is done by a claw on the bolt head carrier. So other than that, it's a roller delayed. It delays it. So if the rollers aren't exactly under enough tension from the locking piece or the claw itself, or the rollers are too small, it's going to take away that delay. So it's not locked in the sense that gas operated firearms are. So it's a roller delayed blowback, not roller locked. So anyways, with that said, first thing I want to go over is the manual of arms. Now the manual of arms for this is a bit different from what a lot of people are used to. There's a video that's actually pretty popular by Untitled Tactical where they load a magazine into here, and then they rack it like a conventional rifle. I highly disagree with that when it comes to roller delayed blowback, and here's a reference that I actually learned elsewhere. Larry Vickers said it best when he was going over one of the Iranian G3s. He said, let the recoil spring do all the work. It's designed to let the recoil spring do all the work. That's why the recoil spring is so heavy, and you do want a good amount of lubrication on the cocking tube and also the recoil spring. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and load up a magazine, and for loading, as you can see here, what I do is I take the magazine and I semi-rock it in. You can see the guys at Untitled Tactical actually doing this, and you don't need to look at it really once you get good at it, and you do it so often, you kind of feel with the corner and then push forward and then just start rocking in. If you try to push it in directly like an AR, it's not really going to work out too easily. So it's a lot easier to find it and then rock it in. Okay, so anyways, once there, here's where I also differ from a lot of people. A lot of people like doing the Hollywood HK slap. I do not do that. My experience, I put a good amount of rounds through this. I'm not an expert by any means, but I used to do the HK slap all the time until I figured out, or I found that I was missing sometimes. I would barely hit it, and it wouldn't overcome this angle right here. You can see it's sort of angled backwards, right here, how it swoops back a little bit. That's so it actually locks into a position, because the recoil spring is going to push it into that little area, as you probably can figure out. So if you're not hitting it hard enough, it's just going to bounce back in. So anyways, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and take my thumb, and those of you that like the C-clamp method, you load in a magazine and then you get on target and then you just flick it down, and that works pretty well. Sometimes you can miss it when you're or not have enough tension if you're trying to take your finger away, like swipe it off like this instead of rolling around just like that. So you just got to be careful of that. Now on the trigger pull, so in order to get the trigger to pull, you have the safety right here, and for me, I got short little thumbs, so what I have to do is I kind of have to hold it like this, and this would be a natural grip. This is the grip that I would need. It's just a little bit off, but once that safety's off, I'm able to rotate my hand forward again and get to shooting. Now, as far as the trigger pull, constant comments about how terrible, spongy, and unpleasant the trigger pull is, right? If you have been watching my channel, you know about my work or whatever. You know that I am not a trigger snob, and the biggest thing is me covering the distance, not sitting there trying to feel the weight and trying to cheat it with modified triggers. I just pull the damn trigger. That's it. That's all you really need to do, is pull the trigger without moving the gun. And this covering the distance rather than covering the weight or overcoming the weight is a lot better, because you're a lot stronger covering distance than you are trying to just enough overcome the weight just enough. So anyways, when you pull the trigger, it isn't really that bad. It snaps, it's a nice crisp trigger pull, and the brass, as you can see, ejects like right past this camera, and yeah, right to your right if you were watching or whatever. But it's pretty violent ejection. It smacks against this area right here, and then it just rotates on out. So I'm going to do another video about the design of this rifle, why it does what it does, why it was designed the way it was designed. Very simple method, very easy to manufacture for the most part, but you still got to put some quality into it, and these parts can be pretty expensive. I don't believe that these firearms are actually worth the money that you're charged necessarily. However, in some cases you get what you pay for, and I don't believe that's always the case, given some of the examples. But you kind of do. If you look at the C308, that's like $400 less, $500 less. They have problems with headspace, and they also have problems with durability. They take a SEPMI, the Spanish SEPMI, and they merge it with G3 parts or PTR parts. The fitting is not always exactly the way it should be, and they have to put them together. It depends on who's putting them together. So if they don't know really much about headspace, then they're not going to put it together right, and the lifespan of it isn't really going to be that great. So just keep that in mind. So anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and do some practice with the safety. It takes a little bit. I haven't shot this rifle in a while, but it is like one of the most requested videos for my channel. And there we go. Sweet. This is my first actual malfunction with this rifle, and this is using hunting loads. So it looks like here I had a failure to eject, and it came out, it extracted, and it tried to slam itself back in. This is not really too much of an issue. This is a 180 grain soft point, so you know, it may not be the most reliable, and there we go, a failure to feed. It actually tried to double feed. So these are oddly shaped bullets. Could also have something to do with the magazine as far as the feeding goes, but yes, these things can malfunction. They're not perfect. However, the operating system, typical full metal jacket, I like steel case. It actually seems to work better than brass. My extractor is still good. It's got good tension on it, and there we go. So I'll just keep going. As you can see, the ejection is actually becoming erratic. It's flopping them back. That's kind of the problem with some 308s, is maybe the way that the gas is working. Let me go ahead and find a shell. As you can see here, this one flopped out. It's actually looking okay. However, I see another one there, and you know, they all look good, but you can see the fluting in here is actually, you know, doing pretty good. So I don't know, maybe brass is just too delicate, and the steel doesn't give as much, so I like steel case ammunition. Not sure why these are giving such a problem, but I also had problems with PTR91. They may just be lowered in power. Maybe it's the 180 grain rather than the 165. I don't know, but let's go ahead and shoot this off. Yep, there we go. So when you get these malfunctions, as you can see, I lock it back, take the weight off the recoil spring, and just do like the reload. You just reinsert and then flop it home with your thumb. Pretty reliable. Alright, so then of course you're out, right? So this goes into the reloads. So anyways, this is kind of perfect that I'm talking about the basic operation of, you know, the PTR, the roller delayed blowback. So for me, because this thing is so heavy, and you know, I tend to be pretty fit, and so I can hold this up with one hand. Sling tension also helps. You can either take the next magazine, and I have the tack latch rather than the paddle, but if you have the paddle it'll work just as well, maybe a little better. But I push mine to, the tack latch gets pushed to the right, and I can reverse it. The way you load it is you rock it, but you can reverse it and then put in your other one. You can do that, or you can do the whole dump method, and this is pretty tight, pretty new magazine. And so anyways, to simulate that again, so basically you're out, and then you're gonna get a click, and it'll make you go trying to recompensate for the recoil, as you saw. So anyways, you can bring it back into your workspace and lock it back as you're going back, kick out the magazine, and you can put in your other one properly, and it just depends on how you're staging it, and put it back in. Oh yeah, this is steel case ammunition, Russian type steel case ammunition, pretty good weight, I believe it's 150, so maybe 145, something like that, so it works pretty good. But yeah, it can take a little bit to learn this stuff, and I'm trying to scramble around showing you different techniques, so pardon me. So anyways, you can hold it in your shoulder and lock it back, which will be more difficult, or just under the armpit, get to this hump right here into your armpit, manipulate it, you know, trade out your magazines, and then whew, yeah, this is a pretty new magazine, so it's not going to be as easily, you know, operated as the other ones, but it works pretty good. And again, practice is key. These things are meant to be manhandled. These are not meant to actually be, you know, tenderly operated. And another note, let me go ahead and just take this magazine out and fire off this round. Okay, so here's the thing with this rifle. I see a lot of people charging it like this, and charging it like so. That is the worst way to do it. Number one, it's kind of uncomfortable to have to twist your hand up, but the other part is, when you're doing this, you don't want to be like me, where I got this scar on my finger right here, because I cut open my finger because I didn't have enough of a grasp, and I cut myself right on this part. Don't do that. Palm up. It's a lot easier, and you just lock it into position. It's a lot faster, and you don't look like an amateur doofus, so when you hurt yourself. So anyways, again, I didn't have it in my pocket correctly. Brass down and to the back, at least for these magazines, going into the pocket. So anyways, there we go. And now the recoil, I guess we have enough to talk about recoil here. So basically the recoil on this rifle is a lot better than maybe what you'd see on the C308s. The buffer back here is what catches the bolt, and it could be pretty violent, like a bolt action, but the bolt head carrier comes smashing back, and that can be pretty violent. The earlier PTRs had a very short buffer. Now they're like 2 or 3 times longer. So I'll just do it from an unsupported, you know, sitting there like I'm doing precision rifle, and it doesn't really kick too much. So, you know, it's not that bad. However, all you need to do to control it is get a little bit of a forward lean, and it goes right back on. And there we go. So I had a forward lean, and it helped me just not really be as aggressive shoving it forward when I have no round in there. So anyways, I think that pretty much covers it. When it's malfunctions, just lock the bolt back, use palm up. It's a lot more natural, a lot easier. You don't risk hurting yourself, and you can't have tender hands. You got to practice with this, manhandle this thing, and it's going to work out pretty well. It's not going to break. So anyways, there's other things to cover for future videos, you know, maintenance considerations, how it works, and a specific video on malfunctions. So I might have to get this ammo that wasn't working that well to cover that video, because I had the good ones. I had a failure to a failure to eject, and I also had a double feed, an actual double feed attempt. So yeah, this worked out pretty well, so hopefully I can get more ammo and replicate that for a malfunction video. However, I will go ahead and do independent videos for reloading and stuff like that to get a little more detail. So anyways, I appreciate you all watching. You guys have a good one.